Federal legislative update from CFM advocate.
Thank you all very much. Joel Rubin with CFM Advocates. Really appreciate the opportunity to be here to get out of Washington, D.C. It's crazy. Chair Downing, board members, really, we've been working together since November of 2024, and just really appreciate your team's involvement and work product to get us to where we are today, putting together a federal agenda, working with your congressional delegation, setting up a tour where Chair Downing and Director Lind participated. Thank you for doing that. It's really important. Meeting with all 4 members of your congressional delegation, giving them a tour of your buildings, your facilities, and all of your needs. This is super helpful for our successful federal advocacy. So what I'm going to talk about a little bit today is, since it's the first time I'm presenting, talk about a little bit about our firm and our successes, go through that pretty quickly, then talk about your 2025 federal agenda, to be your funding request and policy priorities, and then look into what bus transit funding looks like in this upcoming or this current Congress. Talk a little bit about what's going on in Washington, D.C. So our firm's been around since 1990, 35 years old. We have expertise in local governments and public transportation. We represent the National Bus Coalition. I've been working with them for 10 years, and I'm really proud to have restored over $8.2 billion over that time period in multiple authorization bills and appropriation cycles through plus-up funding for bus transit systems. And that's funding that you all see through formula funds and also competitive grant. We represent 25 local governments, some water districts, nonprofits, transit agencies, ports, grain exporters. We're big in transportation, I guess. So we have a team of 9 lobbyists. We have a picture of 6 of them here. You'll probably interact with the top 4. So I worked on Capitol Hill from 2000 to 2005 as the legislative director for a congressman from Washington State. This transportation committee, budget committee, and small business committee assignment, and been working in the transportation space for some time. Joined CFM in 2006. It's been almost 20 years now, and worked closely with a lot of the transit advocates back in Washington, D.C., and the particular committees that are important to transit. We just hired Kate Travis to our team. She was Secretary Pete's special assistant, and she joined our team in February. Paige Strickler is based in our Portland office, and she can come down here at a moment's notice if there's a tour or anything you need on the Grand right away. That's only an hour-and-a-half flight for her. And then Kirby Garrett worked for Congressman Walden, Republican from Oregon. So we have a bipartisan team that can be here at a moment's notice, but also on the ground in Washington, D.C. What we do for you all and many of our clients is go after funding. There's a number of grant opportunities that we work on for you. And we don't just advocate for grants. We actually help you put together a strategy behind your grant program. We have you meet with the federal agencies, the congressional delegation to advocate for them. But more importantly, we got into grant writing a few years ago, and we've been really successful at it. It's a lot of work. It's somewhat tedious, but it's also a fun little puzzle we'd like to get accomplished. And the record of success that you'll see on the next slide shows why that's really important. We also work on the appropriation side for earmarks and submitting, helping your system submit earmark applications. We do all the drafting of those, review the strategy with your team, and then ultimately submit it to the congressional delegation and advocate for those earmark projects as well. Legislative initiatives, working on things that are important policy-wise, coordinating with your state, federal folks, state lobbyists, and at the national level, working with the Bus Coalition, CTAA, and APTA to coordinate your legislative strategy to make sure that you all are in the know and are pushing the buttons at the right time. And then strategic communications and positioning, making sure that we're saying the right things to the right people at the right time. And the successes have been pretty good for us. We're proud of them. Secured over $416 million in the last 4 years for our clients. This does not include the largest mega project that we secured for the city of Vancouver in Washington State of $1.6 billion. Our clients are average 62 to 1 return on investment. We are the only firm in the country that has written and secured 9 build raise grants in 9 years. Really proud of that. The 30-page applications, it takes a lot of work, a lot of advocacy, a lot of lobbying, and understanding what the changing administration's priorities are. And we're really proud of that success. We secured $36 million from 2 transit clients over the last 3 years. And Salem is the only transit system in the country that got 3 grants in a row in that bus facility program. And we have a 100% success rating for our clients when going after earmarked funds. So let's talk about you. So we've been working with your team on putting together some project priorities and some policy priorities, and we call this your federal agenda. And we are going after earmarks and grants, working with your congressional delegation. And these are the projects that are on your list as of right now. This is a living, breathing document. But we've done tours. Lori's been back to Washington, D.C. and advocated for these projects. The South County Operations and Maintenance Facility is one of your larger requests of a $40 million grant through the Bus and Bus Facility Program, which should have opened on April 15th, but the Trump administration has delayed its opening. We're hoping that opens any day now, but you'll be going after a large construction design engineering application for that project. But we're also seeking an earmark funding from their congressional delegation of $3 million to get you through design engineer property acquisition for that project as well. Really cool, exciting project. It's a safety, economic development, and quality of life project for your community. Transit vehicle replacement. We're looking to replace 6 vehicles that are operating 9 years past their useful life. So seeking a $720,000 grant and or earmark from the FTA or your congressional delegation. Your radio systems are really old. I think it's 2010 radio system that needs to be upgraded. You're losing signal in some of your areas. And your bus operators need to use their cell phone at some point in time, which is crazy. So we're looking to get some FTA grant funding or earmark funding for that as well. Your operations management system, you'll put in those 2009, that system was installed and that needs to be upgraded too. And then transit security grant improvements. If you look at the facility over there, there's too much access to the public and people can get in. If you have your CNG facility, but also you're going to be having a hydrogen facility over there and we want to make sure it's protected. So those are the grant and earmark projects that we're working together on. And then on the policy priorities, it's sustaining bus and bus facility funding, in addition to the STIC program and generally bus transit funding nationally. Supporting the extension of the alternative fuels tax credit. Y'all receive about $300,000 a year in benefit from that tax credit. We're looking to extend that moving forward because it did expire at the end of last year. And then property acquisition reform. What transit systems need to do now is if you're looking to acquire property is go through the NEPA process before property acquisition. And we're looking to make it similar to the Federal Highway Administration where you can buy the property first and then go through property acquisition. Buy the property first, then go through NEPA afterward because it causes a lot of problems by going through NEPAs on multiple sites before you can acquire them. That's your federal agenda. I don't know if folks had any questions about the project or policy items before I go on to more bigger picture discussion. Yes.
Could you speak to what the earmark requirement is these days?
Yes. So in 2018, Congress brought back the earmark process. 2020. After a 10-year hiatus, they eliminated earmarks in 2010. Republicans are in charge of the House and the Senate, and they are continuing to open up the earmark process on both the House and Senate side. And they're limiting overall earmarks to 1% of the federal budget. And it's about $15 billion per year that they're earmarking. So it's a very good opportunity to work directly with your congressional delegation to seek federal funding and submit transit projects through that process. Is there anything in particular you're?
I'm just wondering with the federal budget and the state that it's in, when that's just continuing resolution territory, right? Is there still a window for earmarks to get in?
Right. So what happened in the FY25, which is the current year we're in, is they did a year-long continuing resolution. There was $15 billion in earmarks that were included in there. And then because of the CR, all those earmarks went away. But Republicans wanted to, and Democrats wanted to continue the process. So they're opening it up again for FY26. So one of the challenges you have is if you didn't have an earmark in FY25, a lot of the congressional delegation may be looking to fund projects that they put in the bills in FY25 and carrying them forward into FY26. So that puts you a little bit of a disadvantage because you weren't in the FY25 process. But you have a new senator, you have 2 House members. So there might be an opportunity to just slip something in through that process. Thank you.
What's the the likelihood of a majority of that those earmarks going to like red districts and red states, since they do control?
Right, great question. So basically what's happening right now is the Republicans are getting about 65% of the earmarks and Democrats are getting 35%. So Republicans are getting a outsized share because they're in the majority in the House and Senate.
So our chances of getting like a $40 million grant is very, very.
So that's a grant versus the earmarks.
I'm sorry, if you would have done a project earmarked like a project like that, it would probably most likely not happen.
Right. So earmark caps generally around $3 to $5 million in total size per project. So we try to keep it within that range. And the grants, you can go after bigger dollar amounts for those projects.
So what are the projects we're putting in for?
Those are the projects that you're submitted to the.
No, I mean for earmarks.
Right. So the South County operations, paratransit vehicles, and radio system modernization.
So the smaller ones.
Correct.
Okay.
Just clarifying, you said it was $3 to $5 million cap. The first one is $40 million.
Right. So $3 to $5 million cap on the earmark side of things, and on the grant side, it can be much bigger than that. And so you're going after $40 million bus facility grant. Yes.
Can a project take money from both categories?
Yes. So we have a good list of projects here that hit a different range of different priorities. You have projects in Congresswoman Lofgren's district, which is the Watsonville O&M facility. You know, projects in Panetta's district here. So we're trying to get as many opportunities for funding as possible for your transit system.
So, okay, that's the state level. Is believe that our delegation needs letters from citizens in the county in support of these projects, or pretty much on board? They don't need to be persuaded. It's really a question of their work in DC.
All letters are always good to have. They're required as part of the earmark process that you need to have at least 2 to 3 letters of support from the community. So we have some of those, but the more, the better. So we have templates written up if we want to add to the pot of earmark letters of support and grant letters of support for your projects.
So if you can work with our staff to get those out to the board members, if they're member agencies to read those.
That would be great. Yes, absolutely.
What about letters from outside of government agencies? When I think of the paratransit vehicles,
Yes.
are there organizations outside of the government that would do it?
And we did.
Out to some of our paracruise clients to submit letters for us too, and saying the city and county officials.
Maybe look at all of them, see which organizations.
Yeah, so as we've gone through as staff and with CFM, we've identified who we want letters from, and staff has gone directly to staff, city, board members. But we can do that as well.
I was just gonna say that I remember, I've been on this board for a long time, and we had a really good relationship with Diane Feinstein, and she was always ready for us. I don't feel like we have
Who's that again?
Diane Feinstein. I mean, she was always advocating for us, and when we needed a letter or whatever we needed, she was always there for us. Do we have that relationship with any of our senators like we had at that level with her?
No, not yet, but I mean, we're working on it, get there with them. So for me, it's a new relationship, that I'm working on building with it, but we'll get there for sure.
Yeah. So I think we need to start building those relationships to get back to kind of like, I remember when we used to go to DC and she was like, what do you need from me? And we would get what she would do, whatever we needed. And so I think those relationships are really important. And I just want to get back to this real quick. Sorry. So the top two are grants that you're applying for. The bottom three are going to be earmarks.
Yeah, so the top one, South Operations and Maintenance Facility,
Great.
$40 million grant, but you're also going after a $3 million earmark.
Okay.
That earmark is could cover planning, design, engineering, and property acquisition. The $40 million could cover everything.
And then the paratransit's either or.
We're going to be submitting the same thing there. It's a grant and an earmark request. The thought there is that I think someone brought this up a little bit. The Trump administration, I'm a little worried about how they're going to treat applicants in California and some other blue states. So going after a $40 million grant, I think under the previous administration, I think you all would have been in a really good position. So that's why we're also putting forward the $720,000 grant for the paratransit vehicles. One, it's diesel vehicles versus zero emissions. So I'm curious how the Trump administration will fund. There's the low-no program, which there's about $1 billion per year for low-no emissions. But they'll probably do a lot of the low versus the no emission, which would be like CNG projects. But there is set asides for just general bus and bus facilities and paratransit funding. So we're trying to be strategic about going after a big project like the O&M facility, but then also giving the Trump administration something to, if they can't do that, go after a smaller request for something they're more likely to fund. And then the radio systems is an earmark request as well.
Realistically, what do you feel like this is going to be attainable outcome list?
So when we're putting a federal agenda together, we don't anticipate that we're going to get everything. What our strategy is, this is a long-term game. If we get one, great. If we get two, that's amazing. So 2 projects a year would be amazing. It would be really good. That'd be such. Yeah. So what we're trying to do is give your congressional delegation as many opportunities as possible to fund projects, but then also going after the grant funding streams. So you really have 5 bites of the apple, which is a lot of good opportunity. I will say this year is a bit more challenging. One, because you have the Trump administration that might not fund as many projects in blue states. But 2, you had that earmark issue where a lot of the funds in FY25 were set aside for projects and they're going to be carried forward to FY26. So there's less room for you all to get into that FY26 process. But with that said, we're going to do everything in our power to be creative, to think about ways for your congressional delegation to help you and to see how we can work with the Trump administration, get you some FTA funding. Generally, the Federal Transit Administration has been less partisan in their application, their grant awards. There's always politics in play. So that's why we were thinking a $720,000 grant for paratransit vehicles is more milquetoast type of projects that the Trump administration might just fund. And yes. Yes.
This might be an impossible question, but when in Trump's first term, we had a delegation that went to Washington looking for transit money, and we were in a meeting at the FTA when a representative from Trump's administration, the meeting took it over, and made really clear that the first Trump administration didn't believe in public transit, out of the business. I mean, they weren't talking capital versus operations. It's like, cars. People, what do you need public transit for? And it was pretty outrageous and out there. And I'm just wondering whether, do you have a sense that they are that absolute in the second administration, or that at this point it's a little more tempered, or but it's a hard question to answer.
No, I got a good one. So in working with the Bus Coalition in 2018, the Trump administration, yes, there was some resistance we saw from FTA about transit. In their FY18 Trump budget, they included a plus up for bus transit for the first time in the history of the program of $250 million. The Trump administration did a plus up of the bus and bus facility program in FY18. Despite all of the reluctance, I think a lot of the transit is seen as more of an urban issue. And I think the CIG program, the New Starts program, anything rail is going to be a target of the administration. But our argument is buses are in every district of the country. They're in Republican rural districts, they're in suburban districts, and they're in urban districts. That's what makes us unique in terms of Bus Coalition. Our messaging to Congress is this is helping all of our economies. This is getting seniors to their doctors. This is getting students to school. This is helping the economy grow in all regions of the country. So that's the unique message that we used during the last Trump administration. We do feel like it was successful. I think it is a little bit different now. I think there's some more people from the Heritage Foundation that are at the Office of Management and Budget that are going to be looking a little bit more skeptically about transit as a whole. But that's going to be our job, is to separate ourselves and make sure that bus transit in particular, the value benefit proposition for the Trump administration is about economic development, it's about jobs. And that's how we're going to try to separate ourselves. But I am concerned about it for sure. And I will say the transportation reauthorization bill, which I'll talk about on the next slide, you do need bipartisan support for it, and still in the Senate. You need 60 votes. I do think the Transportation Infrastructure Committee leadership wants to have a bipartisan bill come out of the House. And to do that, Congressman Larson, the lead Democrat on the committee, said, when he was asked, what's your number one priority for the transportation bill, he said transit. So if the transit numbers aren't where they need to be, I just don't think they're going to get a bill done. And so the bills needs to happen by September 2026. If there isn't that level of bipartisan cooperation, I think that gets extended. Potentially Democrats take over the House in 2026, starting 2027. And then you have a different negotiation where Democrats would have more power in the House to put a bill in. So that's a very long answer.
That's very helpful.
So I think it's the last slide. So your bus story is very similar to the story that bus transit systems are telling nationwide. So the reason the Bus Coalition was formed in 2013 was the Transportation Reauthorization Bill. I'll do this quickly. The Transportation Reauthorization Bill in 2012 cut bus funding by 57%. We went from $1 billion a year in the bus and bus facility program to $420 million. It's a huge cut. And that went to the big rail systems, but we won't talk about that. So Bus Coalition was formed to say, what happened here? We need to restore these funds to the bus and bus facility program. We're ultimately there, but what the intervening years, until the infrastructure law passed with reauthorization numbers at $2 billion per year, basically double what we were before, the impacts to buses were huge. The percentage of buses operating past useful life increased 56%. From 2009 to 2023, the percentage of buses operating past 15 years increased 103%. We have really old buses on the road. But in addition to that, we went from 75,000 buses nationwide to 55,000. So we have fewer buses and we have older buses. And that's all because of those cuts that were made in 2012 that lasted through the infrastructure law in 2021, 2022. So we're playing a lot of makeup, and there's transit systems like yours all across the country that are telling this story. We need more resources. We need to sustain bus funding at $2 billion, $2.2 billion per year as where it was in the infrastructure law. So I know that you have an aged fleet and you're trying to increase the size of your fleet, but that story fits into the broader narrative. As you're talking to your members of Congress about your needs, that's part of the story, because the challenge that we have, and one of the headwinds with the Transportation Reauthorization Bill, is Republicans are going to say, we gave you historic levels of investment in transit as a whole in 2021, November 21, so it's really 22, and your ridership numbers are still not where they should be. They're coming back, but they're still below pandemic levels. And what we say is the cuts that we saw in 2012, it took about 2 years to see those cuts start impacting transit systems. Same on the reverse end. The infrastructure law passed in 2022, it takes about 2 to 3 years to see buses on the road. And the improvements to service and ridership. So yes, we don't have all the data to show that ridership is back. We had COVID, we have all these challenges, but if we can tell the story about what you all are doing and how the infrastructure law is benefiting your system, your riders, then we're flattening the curve when it comes to older buses, increasing the size of fleets, and then ultimately providing better service for communities across the country. So that's part of the story. But we do have headwinds because we don't have those numbers yet in terms of ridership. They're not, bus systems have a better story to tell than rail systems. Bus systems are close to pre-pandemic levels. Rail is not. But we have those headwinds when we're talking to Republicans in Congress. We also have Republicans that are just generally skeptical of transit in general. But there are opportunities. I know there's been a lot of frustrations when it comes to transit systems about regulations and red tape. This administration is going to be looking for opportunities to streamline regulations. And so we're looking to take advantage of those opportunities as well. There's a small chance, I put this together about 2 weeks ago, that we were hearing from the House T&I committee, there's a chance that they might be earmarking the reauthorization bill. That would mean much bigger earmarks, $20, $30 million, $40 earmark levels in the reauthorization bill that happens every 5 years. I'm hearing that may not still be in play on the Senate side, so I'm assuming that might be the case of the House side, but we'll see. But if they do earmark it, it makes it a lot easier for them to pass a bill. And it also gives you an opportunity to get a $40 million earmark for your operations and maintenance facility. Timing, the T&I committee and the House is working to accept policy requests now. Their deadline is April 30th. They're going to be trying to mark up a bill in the House T&I committee by the August recess. It's an aggressive timeline. I'm skeptical, but we'll see. Senate EPW committee is trying to work on an aggressive timeline to mark something up as well. They do the highway side. Banking committee that does transit hasn't announced a timeline yet, but they're all trying to do something this year. We'll see if that happens. Ultimately, if transit funding levels aren't where they need to be, I think the bipartisanship isn't there. In this toxic environment in DC, it's very likely that other outside events could poison the well when it comes to compromise and bipartisan legislation. But we always need to be ready to act when the bills move. So they don't need to do anything until September 2026. I've been around Washington, D.C. for a long time. They've never done anything early. So I'd be very surprised if they did something this year. But a lot depends on the political dynamics, the level of bipartisanship when it comes to the transportation and transit and highway programs. So we'll keep an eye on that. DC update. I'm over on time there. So they paused and eliminated a number of grant programs. We're keeping a close eye on that. Like I said at the beginning, April 15th, the Trump administration was required by statute to release the bus and bus facility program. It's April 20, whatever it is today. It's still not open. They know, we've talked to FTA, they know they're trying to get it out. It doesn't seem like they're not going to put it out. But there's going to be a lot of question marks that potentially could be answered when the Trump administration releases their FY26 budget in May. And that's going to decimate a lot of agencies. And so we're going to see where the priorities are or aren't. And I'm wondering how infrastructure is impacted by that budget release. You would think the Trump administration, who wants to build things, would look at infrastructure as one area not to cut as much and maybe even invest more in. We'll see. We had a lot of infrastructure weeks under the first Trump administration. Debt limit. Hope you're glad you're sitting down. We have a $35 trillion debt. They need to pass and basically increase the credit card debt limit on that by July or September. It's a moving target of this year. And Republicans are trying to do that in this tax cut reconciliation bill that Trump calls Big Beautiful Tax Cut Bill, where he wants to extend the 2017 tax cuts that cost about $4 trillion over 10 years. He also wants to add no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, and whatever other goodies he talked about during the campaign trail. That would be upwards of $6 trillion in tax cuts. And we're having $35 trillion debt. They're trying the Republican Freedom Caucus, which is the more conservative, fiscally responsible portion of the Republican Party, is saying we need at least $1.5 trillion in spending cuts. That's still or $5 trillion increased debt, but they're really going about for $1.5 trillion in tax and spending cuts, which that's what the conversation's about: Medicaid cuts, food stamp cuts, and all of these other programs that are on the chopping block. It's going to be very interesting to see, with Republicans having a 3-seat majority in the House, and 4-seat majority in the House, and 3-seat in the Senate, how they're going to be able to potentially cut those very popular programs and get this bill done. But Trump has been doing a pretty good job of cajoling his troops to support his provisions so far. So we'll see that over the next couple of months and see if they can get a bill passed. Tariffs, crazy. And then we have the budget that's coming out in May. And so that'll kick off the appropriations process. They'll mark up their appropriations bills. You'll know whether you have an earmark for your projects in the June to August timeframe. And that will be in a House bill and Senate bill. And then they'll hopefully finalize those bills by the end of 2026. Sorry for going over a little bit. There's a lot to cover.
Good information.
Yeah.
Thank you.
More questions from the board? Do you have any comments from the public?
Thanks.
Okay. Don Cremay and I recently met with representatives from SEIU and a trainer from PERB. Together, we're developing collaborative training sessions that will be conducted with management and union leaders. Metro's One Ride at a Time Monarch bus made the front page of the Sentinel on April 16th. And